Hello everybody, this is Jason Merkel with Horizon Hobby, and I'm here today to do an unboxing and a quick assembly of the HobbyZone AeroScout 1.1 meter trainer. And what's really great about this model is it goes together very quickly. It's factory assembled for the most part. There is a little bit of final assembly to do, and we're effectively going to follow the quick start guide that's actually included in the box. And so many of these steps are covered in the quick start guide. There's even more information in the full instruction manual on some other hints and tips and some other details, including the center of gravity, some other things that you can check as well. And so we're going to get started with that. Now, on the sake of time for here in the video, to save us some of these parts have already been unpackaged a little bit. There's some that might come in boxes or bags, and they might be in a slightly different order. And so again, we've done already some of that for us. We're going to pull the transmitter out here, which I've already installed the AA batteries in here, but you will have to do that with yours out of the box. The transmitter and the AA batteries are going to be included. So we'll pull that out first. Then the next step is we're going to pull out the battery here. It includes a Spectrum 2200 milliamp 3-cell smart LiPo battery, which is a very, very exciting addition to this product because smart batteries are safer and easier to charge. In this case, you basically will plug it in the charger will read the chemistry of the battery and set the charge rate accordingly and charge it safely every time. And so one step you may or may not have to do, depending on if it comes with it, there may or may not be hook and loop material on the back of the battery. If there's not, you just use the piece that's included in the package. Just apply that really quickly to, usually we put on the back side of the battery so we can see the label with all the information on the front side clearly. So I'm going to stick that on the back here. So with the battery removed, we're going to take the USB charger out. And what's really exciting about this is it also includes a Spectrum Smart USB charger. And so this charger basically is set to be powered by almost any USB power source. So it includes a cable here, which I'll unravel. And you're effectively going to plug in the smaller end here into the charger. And then you're going to supply a USB power source. This can be any variety of things. You can use a computer outlet. That's usually a little bit slower. A lot of phone chargers or a tablet charger. A higher power charger will charge a little bit faster, and so the charge rate will depend on how fast or how much power your power supply is putting out. So you'll basically plug that into there. You're going to attach that and plug it to the wall, and then you're going to plug the battery into the charger. So you plug in the large orange connector, and then you're going to plug in, this is very important, this is what we call the balance connector. You're going to plug this into the smaller port on the charger. So you're going to leave that plugged in and charging. There's some lights on there that indicate different things, and it will let you know when the charge is complete. So we're going to set the charger off to the side. I'm going to keep the battery because I'm going to show you guys once we have the airplane assembled how everything works, assuming we've got a fully charged battery. So the next step is we're going to remove the landing gear bag. There is the main gear and the nose gear. I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to pull the fuselage out. So there is the fuselage. As you guys can see, mostly factory assembled for you, including all of the electronics are already installed. Now, you can actually fly this airplane without the landing gear installed, but that is one of the very first steps of assembling it. So I'm going to set the box off to the side here. And I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to install the landing gear. Oh, one thing you will need is in the package, in the box, is a screwdriver. It may not look exactly like this one, but you do need the screwdriver to install the nose gear. The main gear snaps into place, which is really neat, but the nose gear does require one screw. So we're going to flip the airplane over here, as you guys can see, and then we're going to take our landing gear out of the bag. So we've got one nose wheel and two main gear. And what's really exciting is the main gear just slides into place and snaps in. It's that simple. Very, very simple. Slide it in here. And you guys will hear a positive click once it's secured. If you pull on it and it doesn't come out, that means it's good to go. Nose gear is a little bit more complicated. There is a screw on the side of a collar here. And this small Phillips head screw is what's going to ultimately secure the wire for the landing gear into place. Now, you may need to back the screw out just a little bit from the factory to make sure it slides in. And you'll notice on the nose gear, there is a slot in the wire. That flat spot, that slot, is intended to be captured by that screw. And that helps to ensure proper alignment and to make sure that it stays in place in the airplane. So we're going to slide that into the collar. And then we're going to slowly tighten down that screw, kind of feeling for contact with that flat spot. You'll kind of know if you miss the flat spot because basically the wheel will be turned to one side and it won't feel solid. And you can actually see as I'm tightening it down now because I'm in the flat spot, it more or less helped and straightened the alignment. So you're going to want to snug that down nice and tight. You don't want that coming loose. And there it is. The landing gear is installed. And so the next step is installing the horizontal tail surfaces. So there's 3 parts required for this. There's 2 horizontal tail pieces, and then there's a joiner. Sometimes we call it a tube or a spar. And so that's in the box here separately. There's actually 2. There's a larger diameter or larger around square one that's shorter. That's for the wing. We need actually the smaller diameter or smaller around and longer one for the tail. And so we're going to pull out the tail pieces here. There are 2. And then one thing I want to point out, for those that are familiar with aircraft, usually there's an airfoil shape to a wing which creates lift. And in this case, this actually has a lifting or anti-lifting tail surface to it. So although it may look like it should go with the curved side up just like a wing would, in this case you actually put the curved side down. So effectively the side with the stickers, that's the top side. So the first step is to take the rod and to slide it into the horizontal tail, into one side. Then you carefully slide that into this plastic part here in the tail section, which is square just like the rod is. And you get the alignment just right, and it is a snug fit. So it will take a little bit of effort to slide that through there. So you almost butt it up snug, and then you're going to install the other side. And the other side will slide on a bit easier. And there we go. Now, that is it. There is no fastener required to secure these into place. The fit is snug enough, and because of the aerodynamic loads that are on this surface, it will not come apart in flight. Doesn't need to be glued, doesn't need to be screwed, taped, or anything like that. Basically, that is it. You can see it will move, and then when we power up the radio, we'll check the elevator controls to make sure everything's free and is moving in the correct direction. So then the next step is to assemble and to attach the wing. And that's also a very simple process. So we've got 2 wing halves, a left and a right. They're already factory assembled. Again, we're going to go back to that other joiner rod. And similar to the tail, we're going to slide it into one side of the wing first. Now here we have to be a little bit careful of the wire lead. We want to make sure that this is hanging down and doesn't get pinched between the 2 wing halves when we slide them together. So the same on the other side. We're going to make sure that wire is hanging down, out of the way. Now we're going to slide the 2 together. And that's it. So you guys will see the wires are coming out of the bottom. They're not pinched by the wing halves. And now that wing is basically assembled and ready to install. So here you have to be careful when you connect the wire leads that are in the wing to the wire leads that are in the fuselage to make sure that they don't get pinched by the wing. First, you plug them in, and they are keyed for proper polarity. And you'll notice that the wire leads may not be the same color, and that's okay. Basically, this is not uncommon in our industry for some of the wire leads to be different colors for different purposes. But in this case, basically the black wire and the dark brown wire match up. The red wire's in the middle, and then the orange wire and the white wire line up. So you're going to plug those in. And it doesn't matter which side you plug this into. Basically, this is what we call a Y harness that we're plugging these into. It basically takes 2 wires and turns them into one where it's plugged into the receiver. So as long as we make sure that the dark wires are lined up and the light wires are lined up and plug those in, make sure they have a nice solid connection, kind of pull on them, make sure they don't come out so they're not loose. Then we're going to carefully take this entire area of connectors and this ferrite bead here, and we're going to drop it into a small open section that there is here behind the receiver, and make sure the wires are tucked securely out of the way, and also are then not pinched between the wing and the fuselage. So we're going to make sure that the wires aren't coming out here and getting in the way of that. So you can see they're basically in the right place right now. You set the wing on top, and then we're going to use the thumb screws that are included. So we're going to grab those screws, and then there are 3 holes, of course, on top of the wing for the 3 screws. I'm going to slide them through, and they should, as you slide them into the slots, when you have proper alignment, they should go down most of the way and only need to be turned a few turns to securely fasten the wing. Again, they might be tight going into the nuts on the other side. The first few times you put them in, you may need to use a screwdriver to help tighten them down comfortably. You need them tightened down just enough to make sure that the wing is securely fastened to the fuselage, that when you move the wing independent of the fuselage or while you're holding the fuselage, that you're not getting a lot of rocking, that it's nice and secure there. So now that the airplane's assembled, we're going to connect and install the battery. But the first step is, this is very, very important to learn, is that you always turn your transmitter or your controller on first and off last. You never plug the battery into the airplane without having the controller or transmitter turned on. And you also don't turn this off before you unplug the battery from the airplane or remove it from the airplane. So again, first step is, we've already got our AA batteries installed, so you will have to install those. We're going to turn the transmitter on. You guys can see the light will turn on here, indicating that it's powered on. Now, the next step is to make sure that the throttle, this is the power or the throttle control, is all the way down to the bottom position. Another thing you'll want to make sure is that this top left switch is all the way back. That puts it into the beginner flight mode. Then we'll also make sure that this switch here on the front, these are our dual rates. Basically, we have a high setting and a low setting. We're going to move it to the high setting for now. I like to start personally with all of my switches up and back. And then the next one, however, this one is a bit different. This is our motor arm and disarm switch. And this is very important for proper safety. When it's switched to the back, the motor is armed. Basically, if you then move the throttle stick, the propeller will move. The motor will run, and that can be unsafe if you're not ready for it. So the first step before we plug the battery in is we're going to turn the switch to the motor disarmed position. So we've moved that switch towards the front of the controller. So now that that is in place and we've got our throttle down, we're going to remove the canopy slash hatch here. And what's nice is this installs with magnets. It's secured with magnets, so you don't have any fasteners. You're going to put your hands on the back here and kind of pull up and away. So the magnet is securing it here in the back. The front is held in with this tab, so it's nice and easy to remove. So the next step is we're going to open this hook and loop strap to make room to secure the battery. There's already a strip of hook and loop material inside the airplane, and we're going to put the battery onto that. And so we will fasten it there. Then we're going to secure the strap around the battery. When you install the battery in the AeroScout, it's important that you put it in about the right position. If you have it too far forward, you can't install the hatch because you can't get the the part here in the hatch to fit between the battery and the fuselage correctly. If you have the battery too far back, you will actually hit the servos. And if you hit the servos, you can cause loss of control in flight. The servos can hit the battery and actually cause damage to the battery. So you can see here, when you have the battery in the right place, you have just enough clearance to get the hatch into place safely and securely. And then you also have plenty of clearance between the battery and the servos. And then the next step is to plug the battery into the airplane. And so the connector is keyed, so you can't really plug it in backward. I'm sure if you tried really hard you could, but you want to make sure that you plug it in with the correct polarity. So in this case, red and orange line up, black and black line up. So when you first plug in the battery, you're going to hear a few beeps from the motor. Basically that's telling you that you have power to the system. You'll hear a few more beeps. You'll also hear some of the servos move and kind of chatter. Now at this point, the airplane is basically what we call hot. And so although we have our disarm switch on to where the motor will not run, just to be safe, we always want to turn the motor away from us. We never want to be near the motor and the propeller once the battery is plugged in. So I'm going to turn that around here so it's away from me. And now the next step is to check the controls on our controller, make sure that everything is working correctly. So in this case, we actually have 4 functions on this airplane. We have the throttle, which we've talked about. It will not work right now because we have the disarm switch on. Then we have rudder. We have elevator. This is basically up and down. We have our aileron, right and left. And in certain modes, some of the controls will do things a little bit differently. So for example, when I move the aileron stick in the beginner mode, which I'm in now, the rudder is actually moving with it as well. The rudder is typically used for steering on the ground and for minor corrections in flight. But in the beginner mode, we have some rudder mixed in and also some elevator mixed in to help make it easier to fly. So all the functions appear to be correct. So I'm going to show you the different flight modes. So again, we now have our switch all the way back, which is the beginner flight mode. In this flight mode, we have safe technology active. We have a couple of things happening. The first and important thing is that when the airplane is moved off of level and you let go of the controls, so in this case, I'm not touching the controls, you can see the ailerons are deflecting. So at this point, I'm trying to make a left-hand turn, or the airplane is going to the left, but it's trying to counteract it by giving right aileron to bring it back to level. So in beginner mode, there's a bank angle limit, there's a pitch angle limit. The airplane will not roll over too far, it will not pitch up too far, and when you release the sticks, it will always go back to level flight basically. So you can see the elevator as well. We'll do a similar opposite controls to bring the nose back down or the nose back up in the beginner mode. So that's a really neat mode. Now, after you learn to fly in beginner mode, which is where most people start and stay for a while, then you can switch to the middle position. The middle position is what we call intermediate mode. Now, in intermediate mode, it does not go back to level. So when you move the stick back to the middle position or you let go of it and put it back into the neutral position, the airplane will kind of continue doing what it was doing. However, it does have bank angle limits and pitch angle limits. So you basically can't roll upside down, you can't pitch up too far, down too far in that mode. And the benefit of that is that you still can't get upside down and usually into an attitude where you'll go into a crash. And so after that is the experienced mode. Now in the experienced mode, which is with the switch all the way to the front, you will not have any limitations at all. So this mode, an experienced pilot or someone who's just learning how to fly is able to control everything in the way that they want to. So if you want to perform aerobatics, such as a loop or a roll, you can do that. There are no limitations. In this mode, the gyros are active to help smooth things out in flight, but it does not take the airplane back to level. It does not keep the airplane from rolling or pitching upside down. So you do want to be careful with that mode. That's definitely somewhere that you won't get until you have a couple of flights under your belt minimum in the beginner mode and then the intermediate mode, and then maybe move into the experienced flight mode down the road. The nice thing about the experienced flight mode though is there are no limitations to the airplane. So you can learn the basics of flying. You can then step into the intermediate mode and get a little more control, and then you can go all the way into more advanced flying, including aerobatics, with one airplane and one switch. You can move from beginner to intermediate to expert mode very, very easily, which is very exciting. So at this point, the airplane is basically ready to fly, and there are some other videos that we'll have where you can go and watch them to see how to take the airplane out to the flying field, to get it ready to fly, to get it up into the air, and how those flight modes we talked about actually work in the air. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and unplug the battery in the airplane. Again, very important to remember to always do that first, and then we're going to turn the transmitter off. And that's it. So there you go. That is the HobbyZone AeroScout, which is a great trainer aircraft, very easy to put together, flies fantastic, very, very easy to fly, but be sure to check out our other videos to learn more about that.